So, introduction to you. So, who are you?
I'm Ruth Denyer. I look after production safety at Netflix in EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East and Africa, for those people who don't work in a regionalised organisation. And I've been doing safety for a very long time now.
So, we met when you were on ITV.
Yep.
Very brief history then. So, how did you get to ITV? So I know the story from ITV to Netflix. I don't really know the story to ITV.
So I did my first degree, my only degree, not my first degree. My degree.
One of
one of my degrees, I did a degree in occupational health and safety. So 3 years studying health and safety management, which is fascinating. And I graduated in 1997. And the jobs that were around were mainly like construction, because that's what's like safety and construction is something you kind of understand. Yeah. And I knew that wasn't going to be for me. And so I was like, what do I want to do? And I did a bit of waitressing and did a bit of this, that, the other. And then I saw a job advertised for the National Theatre, the safety advisor, which I never knew theatres really had safety advisors. I was like, that is my job. Yeah. And I luckily got the job. So that was my first job. And then I've done a couple of other things. I did a bit at the Princess Trust. I did a bit at KPMG. And then I went to ITV and I was there for 17 years. And I started there as their safety manager looking after London and the South because they just merged. LWT had merged with Granada and it was a big merger. And then and 17 years later, I was looking after all risk for the ITV PLC group.
And then that went over to Netflix then in 2021?
2020, mid-COVID. Because when you've been somewhere 17 years and you do safety, the moment to move is in the middle of a global pandemic.
So is your name Dirt?
I did 6 months notice.
Yeah,
so.
Okay. So you, of all my clients, all right, and I'm going to call you a client because just for the purposes of this, but I would say friend, right? And I do think that it's a really nice community, and we've been Stuart talking a lot about how it's really weird to say it's a good chance for me to catch up with clients because I genuinely don't feel, especially last night, that's definitely not.
It's your safety friends.
It's my safety friends.
That's what my husband calls people.
Safety friends. I like it. I like it. They don't make me feel very safe. No. But I'd say that you're quite innovative in your approach, and I suppose the way that we met was about that. You know, we like to use that line, our clients do think differently, and that was kind of really brought on from the first conversations that we had. Is that something that has always been there, or was it?
I don't know. I think I'm always curious about how we can do stuff better. I genuinely think that studying the topic of safety management for 3 years puts you in a different position when you start to think about safety as a kind of a system rather than as the operational tasks we do. I think it gives you a different mindset. But I can remember in probably like 2010, 2012, having the big spreadsheet and trying to think about how we comply the different policies we've got and forms we've got. And our job was writing policies, doing forms. And I think and I know it was like when Safety Differently came about and people started talking about safety different. I just started thinking there's more to learn and there's more ways we can do things better.
Yeah.
And I also think being surrounded by a creative industry, like stuff like training, you can't help but go, couldn't we do better? Like if we really believe in the stuff we're trying to do, couldn't we do better? And so I think I've just got this innate curiosity and I've found that there's so much interesting stuff out there that we can learn from.
Yeah. Well, I think we went in, so we did the Empathy project in ITV, which was a 17-minute VR film. And we've done The Lifesavers now in Netflix, which has been amazing. Really and loved working on that project. That was about a year ago now. We did finish the last one of those.
Yeah,
it's been going for a bit.
Out there, safersets.com.
And it's been really... I love your team because your team including yourself, love to tell people that I'm good, which is wonderful. So we come to these conferences and everyone sells for me. It's really lovely.
It's a virtuous circle.
Yes, it's brilliant. But there's a lot of good people in this community that seem to be sort of gravitating together, thinking differently, questioning, and that curiosity, as Anna likes to talk about, seems to be rife. Curiosity is rife in the community. Yeah. And we've got some really interesting speakers that I feel like maybe you had some influence in some of the speakers at this event for the last couple of years.
I definitely like to find people that I think I just really love to learn more from them. And then I'll share those insights quite readily with Paul and Katie and Anna and say, like, these are people I'd love to hear speak. I have an absolutely unhealthy addiction to Radio 4. So what you'll notice is quite a few of the speakers here have a link back. So Sabrina, who spoke, who's the firefighter, which was phenomenal. She's been on my list of people I want to hear speak since I heard her on Desert Island Discs in 2019. Oh, wow. And it's a phenomenal episode. And I was just like, I want to hear her. And I read her book. And then I've just told everybody I know that I want to hear. And eventually someone's managed to book her somewhere where I got to hear her speak.
So your relationship with Paul and Katie, though, and this event does it go pre-2019? So we met in 2019. But
probably around then. I went to one of these and they've always felt a bit different. And certainly what Paul and Katie are trying to do with them feels different. And then also now having Anna involved in these. But the sense of community and the sense of giving people information but not telling them how to do their job. Yeah. I really like that, because sometimes, like, if you want to be curious about stuff, maybe there's not a clear answer, but there's stuff that you thread together and you work out what your answer is, because nobody's going to tell you exactly how to do your job. Otherwise, we'd all be out of a job.
So what does safety look like in Netflix?
So depending on what part of Netflix, my team and I are responsible for the production side of Netflix. So the making of the content that goes onto the platform, and content is a word that a lot of people don't like in the group. So TV production, film production. And our role is really to help and enable people to plan for and manage the risks, understand them, and then kind of understand what we're doing in pursuit of content and give visibility across the organization. But also thinking about it across countries. And that's what I found really interesting at Netflix. We've done a lot more of, is thinking about what safety looks like in production in Egypt versus France versus the UK versus Spain. And it's very different.
Yeah.
And we think a lot about the capacity to produce content safely and understand what risks there actually are on set. And you'll know from working with the lifesavers with us.
Yeah.
It's often when the cameras aren't rolling and people tend to focus on the stunts and special effects because they're the exciting things. But actually, we build huge sets. People use saws all the time. So it's sometimes the stuff that you wouldn't expect.
I suppose you have less control. And so when we're talking to someone like Yonder, where they have sites all over the world, there is an element of control to that. You're building something physical that is going to exist. You can plan that, deal with that, whereas you're either in studios or, could be any random location, really. So it's
and also it's a different thing. So arguably a data center is a data center. It's trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
What content is trying to do is entertain people.
Yeah.
And what that looks like will be very dependent on what you're making and where you're making it, all the activities, all the sets. So it's constantly variable. And because we work with production companies across most of Europe making the content, we've also got that piece where we're in, I hate the word value chain, supply chain. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like we're genuine partnership, but you have to be mindful of that you're not actively, directly in charge of the activity. You're getting involved, but you want to step. And it's not about liability all the time. It's about making sure you're enabling people to manage the risks themselves.
I think Netflix probably have a reasonably good reputation for safety. I don't think that's, and you've had some pretty big shows this year that are, Adolescence being a perfect example of something that, you're not just talking viral. That was a
phenomenal piece of content.
Yeah, and I think there's interesting, and that's where my kind of focus comes in, is that kind of content. I feel like that is an education piece, that is a training piece, it may not give you the answers of what to do differently, but it makes you think, and that's where I get excited about content.
It's amazing, and the stuff that you sit down with and watch. Like, I watched it with my daughter, who's 15, because it just was a good place to start a conversation, and that link to what does the best training do? It just makes you think.
Yeah, and so can you use some of that in your training, so, is it a conversation that with some of the psychological stages you've got, obviously in the lifesavers, there's, let's see if I can remember them all off the top of my head: listen and talk, fit and ready, and safer ways of working, which are the...
Don't die.
Yeah, there we go. Which are the psychological, so the lifesavers, or
The cultural,
the cultural ones. Yeah. And obviously there's some thought processes in there that, all right, are not, so taking adolescence as an example is obviously not something that you're having to experience so much in an industry side of things. But that style of content, that...
I think it depends, because I think you have to think about your audience. And so that's where I think it's really interesting, because what will work with the audience we're working with, what will have impact. And I think where we've looked at those videos and we worked on with you, we've used some of our content, but we've overlaid it with the lifesaver information. Yeah. I think I go back to storytelling is the tool that we all need to leverage more, and how we tell those stories will be different depending on the audiences. Yeah. And if we've got people who are used to telling stories amazingly, maybe we just need to give someone a story to read sometimes, because it's different. And so sometimes I think we need to just think about different ways of engaging with people. Yeah. But I think storytelling in content is so powerful. And I don't think that the safety profession has quite leveraged the stories that we could tell. Yeah. In terms of kind of how we talk about the work we do.
You only have to sit around in the evening here, really, and hear the things, the stories of what's happened in everyone's businesses. And it's not, you can take one business that seems very boring, right? And I think that's, and they're absolutely fascinating. I mean, we looked at, it's weird because the whole thing got stuck under a sort of a blanket rule of it's boring for me before I came into it, right? It was safety, definitely is going to be a boring subject. Then I came and met yourself in 2019, and we started talking about things, and there were a few other stories that were at that event that was like, oh, this is interesting. And the more people I meet, we'll get an introduction to a new client, and they'll be like, we do X, Y, and Z, and my brain immediately goes to, well, that doesn't sound particularly exciting. And you spend half an hour with them, and it's like, oh, this is genuinely really interesting. Gareth and data centers, we got to visit one of the, so interesting, so cool, like a really, really highlight kind of experience there. Very different to coming to the Netflix offices, obviously, but not quite the same.
Fast-moving, young companies, building at scale. Incredible.
But really interesting story and kind of what's going on. And I think there's a big difference in the diversity across all of those things. So what we experience with when we're talking to Yonder and how they're trying to do stuff, to yourselves and setting people on fire on purpose, and then you talk to Stuart and it's hurtling someone in a car at 300 miles an hour, around a track, and then that's probably way too fast. I've got no idea how fast they go. I should know. Yeah. Well, insert number at miles an hour. I've got no idea. And then we work with, obviously, the AA on the driver instructor training and stuff. And so you've got these really different challenges, but the fundamental thing that goes across everything is caring about people. Yeah. I find that's what I fell in love with.
I think it's caring about people. And I think one of the things I've been thinking about more is it's also partly empowering and enabling people to understand and take risks. Yeah. So I think, and I was thinking about this in line with when you have kids. When you have kids, part of what you're teaching them is to take risks, but you have to be comfortable with the risks they're taking. You have to take them to the park, and they are going to fall off slides. And then as they get older, you're going to allow. And kind of within organisations, what safety teams are also doing is enabling people to take risks by supporting them in understanding and managing them. And I think we sometimes forget about that little superpower that we've got as a group of people, because if you look at risk, it's a really important part of successful businesses. Yeah. But understanding it, and then doing it with the right intent. So taking the risks meaningfully where people know about them. That's really, really important. But I do think that frame to the work is sometimes lost a bit.
I think that is awesome. I've got no idea what time we're on. 5 minutes. There we are. That's good. So tell me a little bit about what you're going to take away from this event, and were there any highlights so far? You still got some to go, obviously.
I've still got some to go. Yeah. I think... So were there any highlights? I really enjoyed the challenge of Drew's talk yesterday, at the end of yesterday, because I think anything that gets you questioning and thinking about what you're doing and evaluating whether what you're doing is the stuff that's worthwhile is really, really important. And we're going back to that regularly, like as a critical friend over your shoulder saying, and I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Seeing Sabrina talk today, I mean, just a phenomenal conversation. And what really struck me was she was talking about a model about decision making and the kind of the pause and the 3 questions before you make critical decisions, and how psychologically people aren't like, they respond really quickly and you need to pause for a moment and there's 3 questions. And it made me really think about how powerful that is, and actually how we don't really think about that enough in decision making, and everything becomes a form and a process, and actually the integrity of the work we're doing being kind of what value does it add. But I like the moment to think about, are we doing the right stuff to move things forward? And the AI session this morning was brilliant. That was fun.
Who led the AI
Prakash.
session? Oh, okay, yes, yeah.
And it was just someone walking through some of the tools, and we use some of the tools. So like the Notebook LM, where you can do, I've played with that a bit. There's some stuff he was doing that on, like just really clever tools that you need to know are out there, and kind of just have a go with them, see if whatever's possible.
So what advice would you give anyone coming to one of these events to make the most of it? I think that obviously there's you would obviously advise people to come to these events, obviously. I mean, that goes without saying, otherwise you wouldn't have come here for as many years as you have. But I mean, to make the most of it, I mean, from a supplier point of view, there's a whole load of stuff in there that they can take away. But from a delegate point of view, that's probably where...
I think I always go back to curiosity. So actively engage, like be part of it, come to learn, don't come to tell other people the answers. And I think reflecting that everybody's in the same boat as you are. And I know the first event I came to, I was really uncomfortable. Like, you don't know people, it's horrible, you feel really out of your depth, but actually everybody's really nice. And you realise that over time when you come back, you get to know people, but we all started not knowing anybody.
Yeah.
And so actually that this is a phenomenal community to be part of, and people will help each other and people will learn together, and we'll all be better if we do that. And I think that's what I really get from this event particularly, is that idea that nobody knows the right answer.
Yeah.
That we're all trying to learn it and work it out together. And I think that's amazing.